Excellent. Yes, we are now recording. Thank you, everybody. So Stewardship Saturday today, we are going to be focused on youth action for ocean conservation. And we have some panelists that are going to tell you more about some of the things that they're doing, hopefully leaving you really inspired and even start you on that path to getting involved or getting more involved today for those of you that already are. So a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. We've covered already, I think, everything we need to go over as far as housekeeping things. We're going to go for about an hour and a half today. If you weren't already aware of that, I'll share that as well. And here's a bit of what we're going to cover today. For those of you, I know we have some people returning to Stewardship Saturday, so thank you for joining us again, but also some new faces today. So we'll do a brief introduction to the Marine Mammal Center for those of you that might not be as familiar. We'll talk about another program that we have called Ocean Conservation Leaders and actually hear from some of our recent Ocean Conservation Leader alumni as well. With some of those stories of youth action from them, as well as from us about some other projects that aren't being represented by alumni here today, but we'll share with you a bit about them. And then we are going to be doing some activities and some different ways that you all can interact and start exploring some different opportunities in your own community. And we'll talk more about that word community. I use that a lot. It can mean a lot of different things. So we'll get into that today as well before we wrap up. So a brief introduction to me. My name is Sarah Smith. I'm our School and Youth Programs Manager, and I have been working at the Marine Mammal Center for about 6 years now in lots of different roles. And I come from a bit of a background in science, starting my career in research, actually as an underwater researcher with some background in scuba diving for myself. But really, especially doing that work of scuba diving underwater every day, found that I was missing that connection and really led me to where I am today as an educator, getting to share this work and really have hopefully that impact, getting to bring some of those stories to life and share that passion with you all through programs like this today. And you'll also be hearing shortly from Karina. So I'm going to turn it over to Karina to briefly introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. I have been at the Marine Mammal Center as a marine science educator for about 2 years now. And my background I'm a little bit in the opposite of Sarah, where I worked with youth my whole career. I've been working with youth for almost 11 years now, and I switched into the science realm in college when I studied environmental science, and then afterwards I've done black bear studies, I've worked in policy and water conservation, but my passion and where my heart has always been with marine mammals, and so my job right now is just a combination of where my past has been, and I love being able to share the work that we do and talk about ocean conservation, especially with high school youth like yourselves. So I'm excited to get to know some of you later on. And thanks so much for being here.
All right, and you will not just be hearing from Karina and I today, you will also be hearing in a little bit from Riley and Minna, and I'll have them introduce themselves as part of their presentations just shortly. So thank you, Minna and Riley, for being here as well. So I'm going to kick us off with that introduction to the Marine Mammal Center. For those of you that have been there, hopefully this looks familiar. We are currently closed to the public still with shelter-in-place orders and things starting to lift. We are still trying to really keep our essential staff as safe as possible by remaining closed to the public, but we have been, as I kind of mentioned, operating in that hospital function throughout the pandemic. Really prioritizing and keeping those essential staff as safe as possible, which is great because there is always demand. And I believe we have close to 100 patients at the hospital right now. So we're quite busy. This is one of our busiest seasons here in April. Karina was just there the other day, and the hospital is filled with sounds of elephant seals right now. Little elephant seal pups, just about a month or two old now, having weaned from their moms, some too early, but all for the most part squawking like cackling monkey chickens, as we call them, is the sound they make. If you're not familiar with elephant seals, you can also look that up on our website later, the sound that they make. But if you haven't been to the Marine Mammal Center, I want to orient you a little bit to where we are. We're just north of the San Francisco Bay Area. So this is kind of an aerial view that you have here. with San Francisco and Golden Gate Bridge in the background. And we are here to the north of that in the Marin Headlands, is this rather unpopulated area that you see here. And the Marine Mammal Center is right here, if you can see my cursor there, right above Rodeo Lagoon and Rodeo Beach, or Rodeo Beach, I hear people pronounce it different ways. But I also want to take a moment and acknowledge this area of the Marin Headlands and some of what we're going to be talking about today as we enter and talk about stewardship. I want to take a moment to also acknowledge that the Marin Headlands and much of this area in the Bay Area was land that was stewarded for many years by the Coast Miwok people, and it is their traditional land and is even still stewarded by those people today. And I think that's really important to highlight as we come together to talk about stewardship, but especially ocean stewardship. And I think it's interesting to note for some of you joining from this area in Marin County, that actually Marin, you may or may not know, is named to honor the Chief Marin who lived and stewarded this land. Particularly, Chief Marin's time was living from 1781 to 1839. So some of those facts that are known by some, not known by others, but really important and critical to this area that we're so fortunate to now get to work in and spend our time in the Marin Headlands for the case of the Marine Mammal Center. And that is where we join you from, although we are all joining from home today. So I join you today from Berkeley, which was actually stewarded by the alumni people. And we're going to spend some more time talking about that today. I definitely encourage you all to learn more about the Indigenous people and land in your area. And we're going to spend a little bit of time on that later. So more to come on that. So jumping into a different aerial view, zooming in a little bit more on the Marine Mammal Center. This is kind of an overhead view of more of that behind the scenes area. So off to the right of this picture, you have some of that public visitation area, our courtyard, and it's really, really cool. If you haven't been there, we have viewing windows into all of our behind the scenes area. So it's really transparent. You can see what's going on in the lab, in the fish kitchen, even in the necropsy lab, where animals that don't survive will go to get a final exam done on their bodies and learn more about why animals pass away when that happens. You can see all of those things happening behind the scenes. And we have an observation deck where you can see all of these pens and pools, but then this is this area that you're seeing in the left half of the picture is really our working areas that only our staff and volunteers are going to do what they need to do with the animals, but otherwise spend as little time with them as possible, since these are all animals that are sick or injured. And we want to have them spending as little time at the hospital as possible, do what they need to do to get better, and then hopefully send them out healthy and happy back to the ocean. So we try to interact with them as little as possible so that they are not getting used to people at all. Very different than how animals are cared for at like a zoo or aquarium, for example. And we are actually the world's largest marine mammal hospital and education facility. So it might not look very big, but as I mentioned, we have about 100 animals at the center right now, and we have cared for up to 300 animals at one time before, which was also the year that we cared for 1,800 animals in a single year. That was my first year at the Marine Mammal Center. It's a lot. A normal year is closer to 600 to 800 animals in a year for us. Usually topping out between 100 and 200 at the peak season, which is right around now. So it can get quite busy, and there is no other facility in the world like us that can care for quite that many animals. And we are rescuing animals in California from Mendocino County up in Northern California, all the way down to San Luis Obispo in more like Central California. But outside of that, there are other organizations like us. They are typically smaller, caring for fewer animals, but the whole coastline is covered so that someone is responsible for rescuing those animals, and there's someone that you can call in the United States coastline that can help with that. We do also have a facility out in Hawaii, I should mention. So that is our operations, and this is our headquarters for California, but we do operate and work in other areas as well. And I'll share a little bit more on this screen that comes with usually different components of our work. So you see in the upper left-hand corner, of course, rescue, rehabilitation, and the opposite bottom corner, release is all of our favorite parts, I'm pretty sure. But also really important, and where our work starts to extend to all over the country and all over the world, actually, is with these other pictures where you see things like research going on. So every animal we have is a really unique possibility to learn more about what's going on with these animals in the wild and therefore what's going on out in our oceans. So we are focused really on researching marine mammal health, how we can treat and get these animals better, but also what we can learn from them while they're in our care, which comes in through studying their health, studying the different medications that we can give them, but also, like I talked about, through things like necropsies too. We learn a lot about animals, even if they don't survive. It's a great opportunity to be able to care for these animals better in the future and care for our oceans better. And we also, of course, do education, which I hope is why you're joining all of us today. I'm glad to have you guys here. And our mission is really about global ocean conservation, and that only happens through education and through the things that we learn and share about these animals in the ocean. So I really appreciate you all being here today to join us in that. Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Karina at this point to jump in a little bit more to ocean conservation leaders.
Yeah, so Ocean Conservation Leaders is a brand new program that we have at the Marine Mammal Center. It is fully virtual, and the two alumni who are with us today will be sharing a little bit more about their experience later on. But our goal in creating this program was to create a space where youth that are in high school can connect with others who have an interest in ocean conservation, in marine science. I don't know about some of you, but I know when I was growing up, my friends put limits on me on how many animals I was allowed to talk about per day. I didn't have people who had the similar interest and passion in marine science, and I think that that can be common depending on where you live. And now with the world being able to become a little bit more remote, the pandemic has kind of forced us into that of hosting lots of Zoom meetings per week and becoming a lot more familiar with that. And we were able to create this where somebody like Riley, who's on the call, who's in Virginia, can connect with Minna, who is in California, about ocean conservation. So that is really the goal of this program, is just to create a safe space for people to be able to share their interests, to talk about things like that are difficult, like climate change, pollution, overfishing, but also to create a space where this group helps them maintain hope and the ability to protect our ocean. So that is the main goal of our program. Sarah, do you mind clicking? I think we have an animation. Awesome. So today we're actually structuring this meeting in a similar way to, we call it OCON for short, Ocean Conservation Leaders, but today we'll be structuring our meeting in a similar way of having breakout rooms, of having a tool that we use called Jamboard, which is a feature on Google, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But just some logistics for those of you who are interested in joining Ocean Conservation Leaders. It is a program that we're kicking off our next cohort on June 1st, and applications are due on May 2nd. So we're taking in applications until then. And you don't have to have experience in this field. If anything, we actually are hoping for people who don't have experience, because that is the group that we want to reach. So don't feel like you need to have volunteered anywhere or have had internships to be able to apply for this program. And we will send out announcements a couple weeks after May 2nd, and then our first meeting will kick off on June 1st. And we will meet every single week from 4 to 5:30 Pacific Standard Time until August 17th. So it is a 12-week program, and each week we distribute some pre-meeting materials so that you can learn on your own independently in the way that you want to, through videos, through readings, things like that. It's usually about an hour of work, and then we meet each week and have those group discussions to talk about what we learned previously, and then usually come together to share ideas on how we can act on what we learned. So it is fully virtual, and this is a program that will always be fully virtual at the Marine Mammal Center. And what we're going to do now together is we one thing that we want to do with this program is connect youth to the area that they live. And there's different ways that we have done this so far, but one of them being, and this is what we did on the first meeting, is connect to where you live, like physically the land that you live on and who originally occupied that land, because that is something that a lot of us don't know about, and we haven't had the kind of like somebody to stimulate that to for us to look into that. So what I'm going to do right now is send you all a link where you can type in where you live. It'll show up in the chat box. It is called nativeland.ca. This should work if you're around the world. It doesn't have certain areas in the world populated, but for if you're in the United States, if you're in certain parts of Europe, it has it written out pretty well. So take a moment to look up where you live there and find out who the original people were that lived on that land. And it's possible that those people still live there today in different ways. And then once you're there, so you just hit go to map. On the left side, you can search your address if you haven't been able to see that. And I will start to share my screen now so you can see. So Australia also is occupied really well here, or populated. For me personally, I would look up Moss Beach, California, and it zooms right in for you. So there's 3 different groups of people who occupied this land. And I'm going to send you all a link now for something called Jamboard. So first you have your group, you know your groups. Then once I send you the link for Jamboard, I'll show you what you're going to do now. Just checking, Sarah, you can see the Jamboard now. Okay, awesome. So once I send you the Jamboard link, you're gonna go over to the left here, get a Post-it note. You'll type in the people who lived on your land. So I'm going to do, just for time's sake, the Ramaytush and Ohlone. And then I'm going to put it on where I live. So I'll zoom in here. I'm sure there might be a couple stacked on top here. I can put mine off to the left a little bit to show that I'm on the western side of the United States, close to California. So I'm going to send this Jamboard link now in our chat box. Let me see that it's working. And just making your Post-it small so that we can make sure we're not covering up other people's, but it's okay if you have to stack it. Like if a couple of us are on Ohlone land, it's okay if you can kind of stack them on top of each other. And since you can still see my screen, in case you need some help and guidance, on the left here is the sticky note, and then you can choose any color you'd like. Type it up, hit save, and then you'll see a box pop up. Thank you. Thank you. I am so sorry, everyone. You should. Okay. There we go. I'm so sorry. During ocean conservation leaders meetings, I promise this won't happen because we use the same Jamboard every week. And so you can just go through each of the pages and you'll always be able to edit. But because this is a new one, we needed to set it up. Cool. Yeah, and you'll see it stacks everyone's on top of each other. So just pull yours away and then make it small and you can move it around. This is very cool. I see we have lots of people on the West Coast, but we do have at least two, maybe three East Coasters. Awesome. So thank you all so much for doing this with all of us. It's also just cool for not only for us to get to see the stewards of your land, but where you all live and see it out on a map like this. We are clearly all located here in North America, it seems. But this is still a cool activity. And if you ever want to do this with a group of people, Jamboard is a free resource that you can use. And you can also add the maps for free. And if you know it's a group, that's just in the US, you can even just do a United States map and get to see everyone all around the map. So just a cool way to get to know your area more and to teach others about it. I'll stop sharing my screen now. But one one thing that we encourage you to do is, now that you know the name of these people who steward your land, is to get to know if there's any way that you could access resources from them. Do they have specific areas that they live on? And so to just get to know them a little bit more. So we can go back to our PowerPoint now. And Jamboard is also just a cool resource for us to get to work together and collaborate on different projects and things like that in our program, and people get to share their ideas. So as you saw, our group looks like it's all over the United States, and that's kind of similar to what we saw in our cohort this spring. So it's not, although the Marine Mammal Center is located in Sausalito, which is in Marin County in the Bay Area, we had youth from California, we had students from Hawaii, from Idaho, Wisconsin, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Virginia, and even London, England. So our high schooler who was signing on from London was participating at midnight to 1:30 in the morning every Tuesday. Even though she's in school, she was that dedicated to ocean conservation, and it was really awesome to have someone in London. So we welcome anyone anywhere in the world to join us. And now you will get to hear from some of our alumni and how they're taking action in their communities, because at the end of this program, we introduced a project which the name may change, but it is currently called the Passion Project. And it's where we wanted to help guide youth to, one, discover what their passion and their interests are, specifically in the ocean conservation world, and then to guide them into what their skills are and how can they combine their passion and skills to then bring ocean conservation to their community. So they're both going to share what their projects were, of course, who they are and where they're from and what they're doing in their projects. So I'm going to have Riley kick us off and go first.
Hi, I always struggle to unmute. Okay, hi, my name's Riley. My pronouns are she, her. I'm in the 10th grade and I'm from Richmond, Virginia. And I feel really lucky to have been a part of Ocean Conservation Leaders because it provided me the opportunity to connect with the Marine Mammal Center all the way from the East Coast. Before I had joined the program, I had already been implementing a community project called the River Sweepers Project. And it was kind of like a community challenge about plastic pollution. I had set out 10 different collection bins outside public libraries and schools, and I encouraged people to drop off as much plastic as they could in these bins. And we got everything from water bottles, fruit roll-up strands, which was pretty interesting, straws, cupcake holders. My favorite thing is we got some hay that goes in the bottom of Easter baskets. So that was my favorite thing. After we get all this plastic, we combine it all, like we consolidate it, sort it, and we make it into a 3D sculpture of local James River wildlife. And we're actually in the process of doing that right now. And the way we do that is I first created all these cardboard bases, here's one, of different animals. So this is a bald eagle one that someone's list like today was working on this. She didn't finish, but she added some plastic feathers from water bottles. So that's how we go about it. And then they paint it and it all comes together. Anyway, once I joined Ocean Conservation Leaders, there was this lesson about how increased access to the environment kind of intensifies a person's drive to conserve the environment. And in particular, we learned that many people of color um, feel unable to unwind and relax in nature due to racist violence. And there was an article we read that talked about how racial segregation in the 1950s, people of color were restricted to living in areas with poor air quality, and they were right next to industrial plants and chemical waste dumping grounds. And that pattern still exists. Communities that are predominated by people of color have worse air quality, they have less open green space, and they're in flooding zones, which could pose some serious risks if climate change and extreme weather events get worse. I had no idea about any of this. And so I reached out to my friends of color, and I found that not a single one felt completely comfortable to go out and enjoy nature. They still did, but they wouldn't consider it enjoyable. And I saw in the poll that everybody felt either they agreed or they strongly agreed that they felt safe. And that is so awesome because that is not the case for a lot of people. And so that's why I wanted to expand the River Sweepers Project to create a safe, kind space for people to go out and enjoy nature together, because there is power in numbers. And I know that in my community, as things have been going on with the Black Lives Matter movement and police brutality events that have happened currently, people don't feel comfortable. So a group would definitely help. And so we'll keep the bins that we've been having. We're actually going to add 5 more. So we'll have 15 bins out. And then we're also going to hold trash events along the James River so people can go out, frolic, enjoy nature, and then combat plastic pollution in the process. Once we have all of that trash, we're going to use it to make an ocean gallery, which will demonstrate ecosystem relationships, issues like acidification and coral reef bleaching, things like that. And then, not to mention, we have an Instagram for the project, and I'll be posting tutorials of how to make plastic art from your house, because this is all about access. And if you don't have gas or the time, you can still do something. And some of the reasons that this project excites me so much is because it fits in with the kind of change maker I am and the values I have. And I realized that while I was in Ocean Conservation Leaders. Every time I took the change maker quiz, I took it multiple times for some reason. I just wanted to confirm. I answered the same questions the same way each time, but I just wanted to confirm. And I always got nurturer. And I can absolutely see that. I do think I have some communicator in me, but I can see nurturer because my big goal about a lot of things is just to support people. And also this whole art project, creatively conveying information about marine life, is kind of my way to protect and nurture the animals indirectly. Some values that it taps into are accountability for your waste, awareness about bad consumer habits, knowledge about marine species, and most of all, empathy for people of color in your community, and also empathy for the species whose habitats are being destroyed. So that is the gist of the project. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them.
Thanks so much, Riley. And if anyone has questions, feel free to type them into the chat box and I can either relay them if Riley is unable to see them, or you may unmute. There's few of us enough on the call where you can unmute and probably not speak over someone. So feel free to ask Riley any question.
Do I plan on expanding it? I hope so. That would be really great to get some like coverage so I can kind of expand it past the city of Richmond and make it a big gallery that can be publicly seen beyond Richmond or transported everywhere. I do have a dream about that. So hopefully that will one day happen.
All right. Thank you so much, Riley. And before we hop on to Minna, Riley talked about her change maker and her values, her change maker style and her values. And that is something that you're all going to get to explore in your breakout rooms in a little bit. But the style of change maker you are is essentially just like what would your role be when it comes to creating change? And we'll get more into that in a little bit. But them two are going to highlight that in how it relates to their project and why they've taken the route that they've taken. So thank you again, Riley, and I will spotlight Minna now.
Hi guys, my name is Minna and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a junior at Marin Academy and I'm from Marin County in the Bay Area. And my passion project is focused on reducing the overall amount of plastic on the MA campus and eliminating the use of single-use plastics within my school. And so in the OCON program, we talked a lot about ocean pollution and plastic pollution in particular. And so I chose to focus on this issue for my project because the contamination of our oceans with microplastic resulting from the excessive amounts of plastic that we produce has really only worsened recently. And I'm guessing you've all at some point probably heard how pressing this issue is and how it really like threatens countless marine species and humans alike. And I believe that it's critical we address this problem now and attempt to affect positive change before we do any more harm to our planet. In fact, I learned that plastic is the most prevalent type of marine debris found in our ocean. And just to give you a little bit of background information about microplastics, they are classified as fragments of any type of plastic less than 5 millimeters in length. And in my initial research, I learned that about 93% of bottled water contains microplastics. And it's estimated that the average American consumes more than 70,000 particles per year, which is just insane and very concerning. And much of the microplastic that ends up in the ocean originates from the products that we produce and use regularly. And within my school, I've noticed just how prevalent single-use plastics are in our everyday life. Knives, spoons, forks, cups, and plates and straws are constantly littering the cafeteria and are just thrown away, often not recycled correctly either. And a long-term goal of the Climate Action Council at MA has been to get the school to ban single-use plastics, but the plan has not really gained a lot of traction at this point. And so this is why I've made it my personal goal to make sure that the initiative gets attention. And I started by proposing this idea to the Climate Action Council at a recent meeting and reaching out to a few of my friends who are also part of the club and who are really passionate about the issue. And last week, I actually spoke with the teacher who supervises the club and has a line of communication with the administration. And he informed me that he has a meeting coming up with the board to discuss the idea. And I've also begun to do some initial research into organizations producing sustainable materials and what they cost, because I realize that this is a very ambitious goal and whatever option I find has to fit within the school's budget, because I think that's a area of concern for them. And I'm also planning to look into other schools who've successfully implemented similar plans and have eliminated their use of single-use plastics, because the OCON program has taught me that a lot of youth that have made these really great impacts have highlighted the successes of others in the process. And that's been a really helpful tool in persuading different organizations. And basically just, I think this is going to help me persuade the school to adopt a similar plan. And once I've drafted a proposal, I'm planning to create a petition to which I can pitch to members of my school community and hopefully gain enough support to show the administration how much this goal means to our community. And being a part of like the OCON program has taught me the importance of collective action, which is basically like working with the community as opposed to just focusing on individual action. And so this is why I really want to involve my entire school community and make sure that everybody's voice is heard. And as a change maker, like Riley was talking about before, I feel like I fall into the educator role because I personally really value education. And I think that it's going to be a really effective tool in both empowering students and the administration to get involved and take action. And my strengths also lie in my ability to communicate. And so coincidentally, the Climate Action Council is doing an Instagram takeover right now on the school's account. So I want to use that platform as well to educate other students and keep them informed. And I'm going to bring this full proposal with a petition to the school, and should they accept, I would help facilitate this plan by contacting different organizations to find a supplier. And I'm hoping that if everything goes well in the future, I would love to pitch this idea to other schools in the district and expand this. And I'm thinking that these first few steps could likely be completed within the next few months, hopefully before the school year ends. And I'm hoping that by next year we could start implementing the plan. And so my kind of timeline here is like my goal is to have the school be single-use plastic free and potentially even mostly plastic free by spring of 2022, which is when I graduate.
Thank you so much, Minna, for sharing. We are so excited to see where your project goes. And if anyone has any questions, please send them in the chat box. We have about a minute for questions. Okay. I'm not seeing questions yet, but like I said, we can't wait to see where you end up going with this, and hopefully we can share more about your project in the future. Thanks, Minna. All right, so I am now going to start sharing my screen in 1 moment. Sorry, everyone. Certain technical difficulties. I'm having 2 screens. Okay, Sarah, I might go back on what I just said. Sarah knows I've been having technical difficulties all day, so she will be sharing her screen. All right. So, thank you. So we've talked about different styles of values and change makers so far, and to give you an idea of what other options are, we heard that Riley is a nurturer and a little bit of communicator, and that Minna is also in the educator, so in the communicator world. What change makers are is it's just this idea that we can't be everything all the time. We can't do everything. We can't be everyone at once. You need support, and you need your community, and you need help when it comes to creating change on an issue you care about. And so we need different people who have lots of different strengths to come together. And you're going to take a moment right now to look at these 5 different options. And no, there is 6. I'm so sorry, I'm missing networker on the slide. But networkers are people who help connect others with each other, and so you're the one who's maybe like organizing the events and things like that. So sorry for missing networker there, but take a moment to look at this slide and consider the 6 different styles of change makers and which one you feel like you would fall into. So I'll give about 30 seconds for you to look and think about that. And when it comes to being a change maker, you want to be creating change on things that align with your values. So think about like when you encounter a problem, like what is your initial response? What problems do you often notice? Because when it comes to our personal values and what we value, and Riley and Minna both shared about their values, the decisions that we make are often based on 1, what we value, and 2, the kind of change maker that we are. And so it's helpful to know this, and it can guide you in how you get involved in your community. So if you know that you're a resistor, for example, potentially protests and petitions, and that is your realm of advocacy, and you know that, by deciding that you're a resistor. And so you can find those opportunities in your neighborhood. Perhaps you're a builder. You just like to work hands-on with, like, daily. When you encounter an issue, you know that you immediately want to jump into action of like, okay, what can I create to fix this problem? That is where builders come in. And so there's different times where you'll see these 6 different styles are needed. And so in a moment, we're going to break you out into breakout rooms, and you're going to share with your group answers to the following questions. So I'll type it in the chat now so that you can follow along with me as I explain it. And it'll be in the chat when you get into your groups. And just so you know, the breakout rooms are not recorded. No one will know what is being said in there except for the people who are in your group. We do ask that you unmute when you're in them. You don't have to have your camera on. You also will share, so you'll be sharing your name, your pronouns if you feel comfortable sharing them, where you live, and then you'll talk about what kind of change maker you think you are and why, and how do you see that showing up in your life. What are examples, maybe as a young kid, that you notice, like, oh yeah, I saw someone, I saw something that was wrong, so I stood up and I decided to do this. Like, what was the action that you took? So think about, like, how do you see that style of change maker really showing up for you? And then when it comes to your values, in case you're struggling to think about this, consider like what problems and issues you tend to notice in your community the most often. So for example, you always notice trash. Perhaps, protecting the environment is a strong value of yours. You have an issue with the fact that there's trash in a lot of places. Maybe you're someone who always notices that a friend or a person at your school gets excluded a lot. And maybe that's something that bothers you. And perhaps you're someone who's more of a nurturer. You want to make sure that everyone is included. But also that could mean that community is a strong value of yours. You want everyone to be included and be whole and be together. So hopefully that helps guide you in terms of like what your values might be, and then share with your group what those values are. So we're going to share again your name, your pronouns if you feel comfortable, where you live, your style of change maker, and what kind of examples you see of that in your life, and then any problems or issues you notice in your community and how that might represent your values. And I'll take any questions in the chat box now in case you have questions about this breakout room before we get you into them. So hopefully that was fun to get to know each other a little bit and get to know the different style change makers that you all are. If you're curious what the other group was, you'll get to see that later on. I'll give you a little sneak peek. But one thing that we want to go over is that we only have shared so far. We're so grateful to Riley and Minna to join us today and share their own projects. But we had a cohort of 40 people this spring. And they all came up with their own projects. So we wanted to highlight just a couple more of these youth-driven action projects that we got to see. And I will let you all participate in this discussion where after I finish talking about one, I'll say go, and I want you to try to guess what kind of change maker you think this person is in the chat box based on what their project is. And so I will type in the chat box now what the different styled change makers are again, in case you're forgetting them, because I know there's a lot of them. So that will be there for you to reference as we kind of play this little guessing game. But these will be more so of informed guesses because you all just practice this and have learned about them. So our first project that we want to talk about is we had one youth who created a zine. And if you're not familiar with what a zine is, it's a shorter magazine, but what's cool about them is that they're independent and they're self-published normally. So any individual can create their own like magazine with whatever content you want. You can sell it, you can give it out for free, you can use it as like a school zine, so many different ways that zines can be utilized. But she specifically wants to create one that covers ocean conservation issues. So somebody who would create a zine about ocean conservation issues, that is their way of getting the message out. What kind of change maker do you think this person is? Go. And I will say you can type it up as I'm sharing it so that when I say go, you have it ready Awesome. Communicator, networker. Yeah, I love this. Great job, everyone. So we have another individual who is in Minnesota, and they want to highlight marine mammal enrichment. And if you're not familiar with what marine mammal enrichment items are, it's where this idea that, and it's been proven, is that animals in captivity benefit from items within their enclosures, within their habitats, that help stimulate them. So at the Marine Mammal Center in Hawaii, for example, we have what we call fish boxes. And it's boxes where we put the fish for the animals underneath it, and they have to move the box around in order to get the fish out, or stick their noses through to get it out. So it's stimulating them while they're there. And one of our leaders, it happens to also be Hawaiian monk seals. The Minnesota Zoo has 2 of them, but they want to submit a design in the Minnesota Zoo like youth science competition, submit a design for enrichment items. So what kind of change maker do you think this is? Someone who wants to design and build something. Go. Awesome. Seeing builder. You are correct. I accidentally said build at the end, but you had those typed up before I even got there. We have one youth who wants to create an ocean conservation school club. This is where they want to organize events that allow students to attend cleanups. They also want to study the trash that's collected to determine further action that might be needed. For example, if they notice that a lot of the trash are plastic forks, maybe they need to implement a ban on single-use plastic utensils in their local area, maybe on their school campus, depending on where their cleanup is. And then they also want to fundraise for nonprofits. So there's a couple different things happening here. What kind of change maker do you think this person is? I see investigator, networker, investigator, resistor, networker. Awesome. So this idea highlights that within one person, you can have a lot of different areas that you're interested in, and it's okay to also pursue those and find a way to incorporate all your ideas into one. So you're totally right. This person is networking by connecting others, creating a club, but then also investigating because they want to understand what is happening in order to know what the club should do. And then resistor to help determine further action as well. So awesome job. So another one of our youth is wanting to collect at least 500 signatures to prove to their school board that increasing the renewable energy that their school runs on, and that all the schools in their district runs on, is really important to students. So this project is specifically for an entire school district and implementing renewable energy. And they're taking a similar approach to Minna is in terms of collecting signatures. What kind of resistor is this? I mean, what kind of, I can't believe I did that. What kind of change maker is this? Okay, well, you all had it typed up anyways. This is, yeah, totally a resistor, someone who is standing up to create change. I would also say that somebody who's working together to collect signatures could be considered a networker as well, but resistor is definitely the dominant one here. Okay, this one I won't spoil for you all. We have one youth who is very into engineering, which is awesome. In the ocean conservation world, we need lots of engineers. And they want to create this educational video game where it's story style. So if you're familiar with games like, I'm gonna age myself so much here, like Sims, where you have a character and you move through a world as that character, maybe like Crash Bandicoot. Those are my examples. You all probably have better ones, but you have a character and you go through the world as this character. And she specifically wants to have it as an animal. And her goal for creating this game is for that animal to have to go through different obstacles, such as climate change. And she hopes that in doing this, the person who is playing this game, one, starts to build empathy for animals by seeing what they have to go through in their natural environment. But two, this is a virtual nature experience for this individual who's playing it, and maybe they don't have access to some of these environments, and this allows them to have that access. So what would this what would this change maker be? Builder, communicator, nurturer. I see all of those, definitely. Builder. Yeah. So when it comes to builders, that's where you see often like engineers being in that world, or people who work in community gardens. And there's so many different careers that these all fall into, and that people who have this within them, certain careers or paths that they tend to gravitate towards. So I think you all did an excellent job. And hopefully hearing some of these unique ideas inspires you as you move through your community and find ways to get involved. With that, I think we'll take it to the next slide. And along the lines of what to do next. So now you know your values, you got to share them with other people, you know what style of change maker, meaning like what skills you have and where you want to take those skills. So what can you do next? There's ways that you can find out about community-based organizations in your area where you live. Just doing a simple Google search, like let's say you love pets and you want to help pets find homes and things like that. Googling animal shelters near Burbank, California, or something like that. And you can find out the animal shelters that are in that area. Then you look into which ones take volunteers. How can you get involved with those? And then another way is if you specifically want to get more involved with ocean conservation leaders, then definitely apply for our program. We would love to see you there and have you join us and find out more specifically about all these different ways to get involved and all the different areas of ocean conservation that there is, because it's a big topic, lots to break down. And I will send a link in the chat now that has the link to that website. So you're more than welcome to check us out there. And with that, I will kick it back over to Sarah.
Karina. So we are going to wrap in just a little bit here, but stay with us for a few more minutes. I want to also close this out, kind of circling back to this idea of community, and hopefully you saw this really showing up in some of those examples from Riley and Minna and some of our other recent ocean conservation leader alumni. The community can take a lot of different forms, and sometimes it feels really overwhelming. Like I think about my community of Berkeley, and it's like huge and overwhelming. But there are so many different ways that community shows up, whether that's like you see in these examples, your school or your club or a team that you might be part of for sports or other kinds of teams for hobbies or interests that you might have. Those are all different kinds of community as well. And those are areas that you really have influence and have an ability to really make an impact that, as we saw, I think in Minna's is a really great example that you can start small when we hear phrases like think global, act local. Those small changes that you can make and have influence can really have ripple effects when you can start to show the impacts that you're having and provide that example to other groups. You can see that starts to really magnify and turn into those larger actions, just with those little steps that hopefully feel a lot less overwhelming to get started in. So want to give you all the opportunity to share, and we're going to wrap up today with some last polls. If I can move to my next one, here we go. I'm going to launch that now. So we've got a few questions here, and we'll share these with you as well in a moment. We want to hear about what kind of change maker you are, so the other groups you heard from the people in your group, but we want to hear from you again. And again, if you need to reference, you should have the options there, but they're also in the chat box. Because I know some of you might have lost connection for a little bit there. So there's a recap of that. And then you can see what was going on in those other breakout groups. And we also want to know, we asked at the beginning, if you know how to get involved in conservation actions in your community. We want to know, after hearing some of these examples and learning more, if you're feeling empowered to get more involved than you already are, since I know a lot of you shared that you already are involved, which is fantastic. And then, of course, we want to hear about your experience today and get a little bit of evaluation from you while you're all here. so we can continue to improve Stewardship Saturday, and invite you all to come back and continue to join us. As always, Stewardship Saturday is going to continue to be free, but we'll have different topics each month. You can just join one, you can join any topic that interests you, or you can join every month. We encourage you to do that if you have interest too. And of course, the recordings are available as well, as if ever you're interested in a topic but the date doesn't work for you. And this recording will be available sometime in the next week, again, on our Stewardship Saturday and our online learning resources pages of the Marine Mammal Center website. And last but not least, I'm going to ask Karina to enter into the chat box. In addition to this little brief evaluation that we're doing, we are going to share a SurveyMonkey link with you that you can do now or you can do later. That will get some additional questions from you, again, so we can continue to improve, but also so you can reflect on this experience. Is a big part of learning, being able to reflect, think back to what you're taking away from today. Of course, we want to hear more about that, but it's a really powerful experience for you to really internalize anything that was impactful for you today, that you heard from our speakers or from each other in the breakout rooms. So I'm going to end polling. Thank you all for participating. I'll share those results with you. As you can see, we've got a mix. That's awesome to see. We have such a great mix of different change makers. Going back to what Karina shared earlier, it really takes those different strengths to come together and make an impact. So it's great to see that we've got such a good mix here. A lot of nurturers, a lot of builders, but a good mix of some others as well. Awesome to see that. And so glad to see that you guys are feeling empowered to get more involved in your community, and definitely encourage you to start with some of those small steps that we're suggesting and continue moving forward. Getting to know your community, the more you get to know, the more you see those opportunities to get involved in ways that are really going to suit your passions, skills, interests. So that's awesome. And glad to see as well that you guys are enjoying the experience. So thank you all for sharing that with us. And thank you all again for joining. I'm going to stop sharing. We'll keep it open for just a moment here. If anyone has any questions they want to enter into the chat box, please feel free to do so. Because I think I can't actually see my clock, but I think we are wrapping a little bit early here today. So if you want, you've got a little bit of extra time in your day to participate in that SurveyMonkey right now. We certainly appreciate your feedback. But with that, I'll go ahead and put up, thank you for attending. Here are some other reminders of other ways you can stay connected with us. And we do have the next Stewardship Saturday for May 15th already posted. You can register for that now if you're excited about it. We will be talking about communicating climate change and some of the best practices and some practice with doing that. So encourage you guys to join us for that one if you can, or check out the recording if you're not available that day. But thank you all again, and have a great day if you're signing off, or let us know if you have questions in the chat box. We'll stay on for a couple more minutes. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much.